So, a really big shift is happening right now in India's rural welfare policy. And to get our heads around what it all means, we're going to dive into a recent column by Shankar Iyer. He's asking a pretty sharp question. Can just changing a name really fix a system's old problems? Let's unpack his analysis. All right, so let's jump right in. The very first thing you notice, the most obvious change, is the name. We're talking about the world's largest rural employment program, which we've all known as MGNREGA for years. Well, it's got a brand new name now. And as Shankar Iyer puts it, this means the responsibility for easing rural poverty has, in a way, moved from Mahatma Gandhi to Lord Ram. And that brings us right to the heart of what Iyer is digging into in his column. Is this just another complicated acronym being tossed into what he calls India's acronym soup of welfare schemes? Just a simple rebrand? Or is there something much, much bigger happening here? A fundamental shift in how the state thinks about welfare. Okay, so let's get past the name for a second. What's actually different in the new law? We're going to break down the real nitty-gritty changes that totally reshape how this whole thing operates. Now, this table really lays it all out. On the surface, you see the promised workdays go up from 100 to 125, which sounds great, right? But then you look at the funding, and that's a huge change. It's not 100% from the central government anymore. Now, states have to chip in 40%. And the whole structure is being flipped on its head, from a bottom-up, village-led approach to a top-down system tied into big national infrastructure projects. Oh, and there's also this new mandatory 2-month pause during planting and harvesting seasons. Now, you'd think with changes this massive, there would have been a really deep, serious debate about what it all means, right? Well, according to Iyer, that's not exactly what went down. The whole conversation kind of got derailed. What Iyer points out is that the name change itself was a pretty savvy political move. He argues it worked exactly as planned. It baited the opposition, and suddenly the entire debate wasn't about the policy details. It was all about removing Mahatma Gandhi's name and using Lord Ram's instead. And right there, that's the author's central point in a nutshell. The whole narrative got stuck on the form, the name, while the substance got completely ignored. And the substance was the really important part. A debate about whether these new rules would actually fix any of the old system's very real problems. Take corruption, for example. It was one of the main reasons given for scrapping the old law. But the column highlights a huge problem with that argument. The last full, comprehensive national audit of the scheme, it was way back in 2013. That's a massive data gap right in the middle of a critical debate.
All right, so this brings us to a really critical part of Iyer's analysis, performance. To figure out if the new law has a chance of working, he says we have to look at the track record of the old one. So let's look at the hard numbers. How did the promise stack up against reality?
Okay, so the promise of MGNRGA was incredibly simple and powerful. It was a legal guarantee of 100 days of work. If you were a rural household and you asked for it, you were supposed to get it. It was meant to be this essential safety net. But the reality, well, as the data in the column lays bare, it was a totally different story. Over the last 5 years, the average number of workdays people actually got was somewhere between 48 and 52. That's barely half of what was legally guaranteed. And look, it wasn't just about not getting enough days of work. For the work that people did do, the column points to a gigantic problem with getting paid. As of this past August, we're talking about more than 12,000 crore rupees in unpaid wages. To put that in perspective, that's about 14% of the entire budget for the year, just missing, owed to the very people this whole thing is supposed to help. So this is where Iyer kind of zooms out. He uses this one policy change to talk about a much bigger picture, a broader pattern he sees in how India handles public policy and welfare. He's arguing this isn't just a one-off thing. Just look at the sheer scale of it all. The article points out that India runs some of the biggest welfare programs on the planet, the largest free food program, the largest health insurance program, you name it. The central government alone is spending nearly 6 lakh crore rupees. And yet, this is the question the author poses. With all that spending, why is there still so much deep-rooted rural distress? And Iyer has this really powerful term for this whole approach. He calls it freebie flyovers. Think about it. It's a strategy that's all about building these flyovers to get over the immediate problems, the consequences of poverty, using populist giveaways. But it never actually goes down to fix the broken roads underneath, the root causes that are stopping real growth and job creation. And to really nail this idea, he borrows a quote from Charles Dickens. It goes, "There are books of which the backs and covers are by far the best parts." It's a brilliant metaphor, right? Ayar is suggesting that for a lot of these welfare schemes, the packaging, the name, the big promises is fantastic. It looks great on the cover, but when you actually open it up and look inside, the performance just doesn't live up to the hype. Which brings us to the final, really challenging question the column leaves us with. It forces you to ask, can a system that's built on what Iyer calls the political constituency of charity ever deliver real economic growth? Or does that very approach in the long run get in the way of creating actual, sustainable opportunities for people? It's that classic, tough balancing act between equity and efficiency. And it's right at the heart of this entire conversation.